like the example of the wayward son. When I think about that son, a couple of things occur to me. First of all, there's no chance that son isn't doing all sorts of things that he has no business doing in the first place. Odds are pretty good that that wayward son is taking drugs, he's got a drinking problem, and probably up to all sorts of other bad things that we won't say in this room, because I've got two young teenage boys here and they're impressionable. Odds are also pretty good that wayward son is not doing the things that he is supposed to be doing. He probably isn't married, or if he is married, he isn't taking care of his wife. If he has children, he's not taking care of them. He's probably not paying his taxes. He's probably not going to church or synagogue. He's probably not being a good citizen. You see, governments are the same way as children. They're the same thing as a wayward son. They get into trouble when they're not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. And they are doing lots of things that they were never intended to do in the first place. So the way we dig ourselves out of that hole, it isn't magic, it isn't rocket science, it isn't difficult. It doesn't require a PhD from MIT in mathematics. All it requires is common sense to stick back to the original document that sets the ground rules for what the government is supposed to be doing in the first place. If you were the father of that wayward son, you'd want to make him get back to first principles, read his scriptures, figure out what it is that motivates his life and directs him, sends him in the right direction. When it's the government, you send it back to the Constitution. The government, the federal government, is supposed to be protecting our borders, protecting national defense. It is supposed to be making regular, making uniform, making possible interstate and foreign commerce. When it's not doing those things, it does other things like redistribute our wealth, like create an intergenerational Ponzi scheme that robs from us and takes and gives to others. That's wrong. That has to stop right now, and on my watch, it will.
First of all, I think think about this for just a minute. $12 trillion of debt. We pay something in the neighborhood of $500 billion a year on interest for the national debt. $500 billion of our budget annually goes to pay off the debt in this country. There is absolutely no way right now that we can easily pay off the debt unless the economy can grow rapidly. We are in a down economy. What happened with the Obama administration is we have added so much debt. The economy went down, revenues went down, taxes went down for the government, and all of a sudden, what did we do? We spent like crazy, like drunken sailors. And what we have to do, in going back to Washington, I'm a CFO for a small company, we have 60 employees, and when revenues go down in this economy, what do? You don't spend money like crazy, you have to cut spending. And we have to dramatically cut spending in this country. We have to cut spending for 10 years consistently to slowly get the debt down under control. And I am going to work for, if I'm your senator, a balanced budget amendment, because that is the critical missing piece right now for us to get our fiscal house in order. We do it as a state, and we are forced to make tough decisions. We're furloughing teachers in this state for 3 days. We are making difficult decisions. We have to fire government employees. Do you know how hard it is to fire a federal government employee in this country? I worked in the Reagan administration as a young kid. I graduated from BYU, went out and worked in the Reagan administration, and it is a cesspool of waste, fraud, and abuse. There is enormous ways that we can actually cut the budget. But we have to pressure Congress, and we have to have a wave of people like myself, new senators across this country that will go back and take fiscal responsibility into Washington, D.C., so that we can reduce the debt and make a coherent plan. Cutting government spending, balanced budget amendment, and at the end of every year, stop incentivizing this budget process that we go every year, you build on last year's budget and you add to it. That's not how it should happen. We should give incentives to people to cut government spending, and with that, I think we'll return to normalcy.
The federal government has no business bailing out the private sector and failing companies. I actually agree with Mitt Romney when he said, let them fail, let them restructure, and then let them come back, and they'll be stronger than ever. Delta's done it 3 times. Actually, it's very simple. My dad taught me everything I need to know about finance and budgeting. He said, don't spend more than you earn. Pay cash. If you got to go into debt, get out quickly, save 10%, pay 10% to your church. Now, wouldn't it be nice if Congress knew how to do that? Well, how are we going to get ourselves out of this? We've got to get down and rip out the roots, and I'm going to be a broken record tonight. Follow the money. We are mixing business with government and government with business, and that has a bad history and it has a bad ending. And we are repeating the mistakes of the FDR administration all over again, and we are prolonging this depression. Here's what we've got to do. My husband and I own a company, and we've got to have a fixed pie budget. We've got to put everything on a single spreadsheet, everything that's off budget, Social Security, Medicare, the House, the Senate, the President, the Judiciary, those budgets all have to come together. Then we have to look at that balance sheet. How much did we bring in? How much are we spending? Do the math. It's simple. Then what we do is we decide to reduce our spending and get us out of debt. It's going to take us, to get $1 trillion paid off, it takes at $1 million a day, 3,000 years, and our Congress has just voted to increase our debt limit $12.4 trillion, and that's only going to get us through February. My friends, we're on the wrong track, and when I'm in the Senate, I'm going to speak out strongly and make sure that that stops.
This, I think, is a great question. Last year, I had a chance to meet with Monty Bateman in his house. It was very clear at that time, after speaking with him and going to the website, that myself and the Independence Caucus had an idea. This idea was very similar. It's making a pie. With this pie, every penny that the federal government spends goes into this pie. That's called the budget. Nothing spent outside that pie, nothing spent on the side or in other programs. By doing this, we can get a true budget that we can start to work on. Any bill, any piece of legislation, any spending from that point on has to be accompanied by another piece of legislation that dictates there's a 105% decrease in another area. This will slowly erode away at the budget. I believe in the free market system. The free market system can increase the amount of taxes that goes to the federal government constitutionally if it's done correctly. I believe in lowering corporate taxes and lowering the capital gains tax. At this point in time, if we drop the capital gains tax and lower the corporate tax, we can incentivize corporations moving back into the United States, putting good, hardworking Americans back to work, and increasing our economy to where it should be. Right now, we are losing billions and billions of dollars in corporate taxes because of corporations moving overseas. They're putting people in other countries to work, and we're moving and transferring the wealth of the United States out of this country and into the hands of people in other countries. If we drop the capital gains tax and the corporate tax to reasonable levels, below 10%, we can incentivize businesses and corporations and manufacturing back into the United States. We can increase the amount of taxes going into the federal government, lowering the federal budget, and we can get a pie system together constitutionally that we can start spending constitutional funds without going further and further into debt. Thank you.